What began as a simple habit among their people soon spread to the wider world. Rangers of the north took up the practice, and even Gandalf became quite fond of it, and you'd often see him puffing thoughtfully on his pipe. Alongside pipeweed, the hobbits became known for their brewing, particularly in the South Farthing, where the richest soil produced the finest of ales. A hobbit could speak with pride about the ale from his or her village tavern, knowing that nothing in the wide world could quite compare. But for all their skill in farming and brewing, what truly set hobbits apart was their sense of community. They were a people who valued family, friendship, and above all, hospitality. They took every opportunity to gather together. Whether it was feasts, festivals, or a good old party. Hobbits prided themselves on their ability to throw a celebration like no other, with food and drink flowing in abundance and laughter echoing through the mounds of the Shire. And in true Hobbit fashion, their birthdays became an occasion for giving instead of receiving. On their special day, it was the birthday hobbit who handed out gifts. In the end, Hobbit culture wasn't about grand gestures or noble quests. It was about the simple joys of a well-tended garden, a good pipe, and the warmth of friends and family gathered around a table. It was a life lived close to the earth, but with hearts open to the world. And then along came Bilbo Baggins. For generations, the hobbits of the Shire had lived quietly, untouched by the great events of Middle-earth. But that changed in the year 2941 of the Third Age, when a hobbit by the name of Bilbo Baggins, a well-to-do, decidedly unadventurous resident of Hobbiton, found himself swept into an adventure unlike any the Shire had ever known. It all began when the wizard Gandalf, along with a company of dwarves led by Thorin Oakenshield, came knocking at Bilbo's round green door. They had a dangerous quest ahead of them, to reclaim the lonely mountain from the dragon's Smaug. And, to Bilbo's shock, they wanted him to be their burglar. Now, Bilbo wasn't the sort to go on adventures. In fact, he was quite happy with his books, his garden, and his comfortable little hobbit hole. But Gandalf had other plans, and soon, despite all his protests, Bilbo found himself swept up in a journey that would take him far beyond the safety of the Shire. Trolls, goblins, dragons, and even the mysterious elves became part of his story. But none left as deep an impression on him as the strange, twisted creature called Gollum. Deep under the misty mountains, in a dark and forgotten place, Bilbo came upon a small golden ring. A ring that seemed harmless enough, but would soon reveal itself to be much more than a simple trinket. This, of course, was the One Ring. But at that point, Bilbo didn't know of its true nature. For him, it was just a lucky find. But this ring, once forged by the Dark Lord Sauron, was destined to change not just Bilbo's life, but the fate of all Middle-earth. He returned to the Shire around a year later, as a wealthier and more worldly hobbit, what with being a key part in defeating the fearsome Smaug, and in the restoration of the dwarven kingdom of Erebor. But predictably, his newfound fame as an adventurer, caused a stir among the conservative hobbits of Hobbiton. They looked on his travels and riches with a mix of admiration and suspicion. Despite this, maybe as a testament to just how protective hobbits were of their peace, Bilbo's story did little to change the general insularity of the Shire. Hobbits continued to live as they always had, largely uninterested in the wider world. But Bilbo had brought with him a piece of the dark history of Middle-earth, in the form of the Ring. The ring granted its bearer invisibility, which Bilbo used sparingly to get out of some tight spots and situations. But it also had a much darker influence, slowly extending its control over him. For decades, Bilbo lived a long and seemingly untroubled life. But the ring subtly extended his lifespan and began to affect his mind. Now, hobbits, being naturally resistant to the seductive power of the ring, kept Bilbo relatively free from its darker effects for many years. Nevertheless, its influence was always present, and as Bilbo aged, he became more possessive and secretive about it. While Bilbo's adventures were long over, the world outside the Shire was becoming more and more dangerous. Sauron had fully returned to Mordor by 2951, and the Dark Lord began actively seeking the One Ring, totally unaware that it was in the possession of a hobbit. He dispatched his agents, known as the Nazgul, or Ring Wraiths, who, by the way, I have a whole video about on the channel if you're interested, to search for it. And although the Shire was still safe for the time being, it was clear that the peaceful days of the hobbits were coming to an end. At this time, Gandalf started to suspect that Bilbo's ring might be more than it appeared. He got deeply suspicious when Bilbo's behavior became more erratic, and he began investigating the history of the One Ring. Many years later, Bilbo threw a grand birthday party to celebrate his 111st birthday, during which he intended to leave the Shire and pass the ring on to his younger cousin and heir, Frodo Baggins.